There's this GM truck that stalled on the road. I talked to the guy and he says it made a banging noise or a noise in the engine, and the engine just quit and completely stopped running. So we just want to see if we can figure out what's wrong with it, if ignition problem or timing chain problem or fuel problem. We'll see if we can do a diagnosis and find out what's wrong with it. This is a 4.3. I believe this engine is a interference engine, and I looked at a diagram of it, and it has a timing chain tensioner on it also, so it's possible that timing chain tensioner let go or something in the distributor, or we'll see if it'll crank and see what it sounds like. Okay, I'm going to crank it and let's hear what it sounds like. Alright, it cranked evenly, and it had compression. You could hear it going if the timing chain had fallen off, it'd just go, there'd be no, you wouldn't hear the starter coming up against the compression on the cylinders. So we know the timing chain is still connected. We know we don't have any bent valves, because if it had a bent valve, it would be cranking irregularly. It would go like that kind of a sound. So we know that all the valves are good. And we could hear something popping in the exhaust, so that would indicate to me we have spark also. So there's still a good chance that the timing chain has jumped, or something in the distributor. Right? That's where I'm leaning towards now. So we'll go into diagnosing that. We'll pull a spark plug, find TDC on one cylinder. There's several ways we can do it. We can pull a valve cover and get two valves so they're in the middle of the rocking, where the intake and the exhaust are both starting to open and close, where they're both partially open. And at that point, that cylinder should be at TDC, and that would mean your timing chain was in the right place. Or we can pull the front of the engine off and inspect the marks on the crank gear and the camshaft gear and see if they're in sync. Or I think I'll try timing light on number 1, and I'll put a mark on the front crankshaft pulley and see if that firing before TDC. If it's firing after TDC, we know for sure that it's jumped, or the distributor's spun or something like that. So that's our next trick. Okay, I pulled out a spark plug. I set it on top of the alternator, and I'm going to crank it now and see if it's got spark, just to make sure. And also, it smells like fuel. You can see it's damp, so we know it's got fuel. So we're going to try. So we could see the spark, and you notice the little skip when it was cranking. You go that's one cylinder with no compression, because the spark plug is missing. And I would do exactly the same thing if the piston had come up and hit the valves a bit, and one of the valves was hanging open. So we know that it's got spark. It smells of fuel. The spark plug's actually damp, so we know it's got fuel. So it's a problem with timing. So we know the crank trigger is working, obviously. So we're back down to a distributor. Probably camshaft, timing chain. So I've pulled the spark plug out. I've put a screwdriver in the hole here. And now I'll turn the crankshaft back and forth with a wrench on the front of the crankshaft and feel the piston. It's going down there. I'll turn it crankshaft the other direction from the front of the engine. It's coming up, coming up, coming up, coming up. Just starting to go down. So I'll mark that, and then I'll go back to turn it the other way. And it's going up, going down. So I'll mark those 2 spots, and top dead center will be pretty much in between those 2 spots, and I'll have a reference mark to go off. I'll just put a felt marker on the front of the crankshaft here on the pulley and line it up with something on the engine, and I'll use that as my reference mark. So I marked a reference mark, and I could feel the piston going down here. Turn it the other way, I could feel the piston going down somewhere in here. So I just took those 2 as that reference mark and put a mark in the center, and that's where we'll say the piston is at the top within 1 or 2 degrees. So that's close enough for the test we're going to do now. Let's just see if we can pick up with the induction timing light and see if we can get it to see where it's sparking. So we've pulled the cover off here and found the starter relay. Pull the starter relay out, turn the ignition key on, and we'll just jump it out. And hopefully you can see this. This should make it crank. You can also see the timing light is also blinking in time with us. So, all right, here we're going to go. We're going to crank it and check the timing mark. Okay, you can see the time mark right on where it's supposed to be. So we know the timing change is not good. Okay, we'll just check the fuel pressure quickly just to make sure that we have proper fuel pressure. Yeah, 50 pounds, that looks fine. So we know that's not the problem. And it definitely smells like gas. So we know it's not diesel or anything, so it should be good there. It's gonna narrow down on everything. So now we've checked fuel pressure. We've smelled the fuel, it smells like gasoline. We know we got compression. We know it's sparking at approximately TDC. The timing chain could still be on. I don't know what this engine is supposed to spark at. Cranking it could be up to 20 degrees advanced, which would mean a tooth, but it should still run so long as it's firing before TDC. The next thing I got to do is check codes, which I forgot to bring my scanner out, and pull the distributor cap off and make sure that maybe the cap's just shot underneath there. Well, today I came back with my scanner and checked the codes. There's no active codes in this truck. Of course, it won't start. Yesterday we checked out, had fuel pressure. We checked the spark at the spark plug. We found TDC on 1 cylinder. Checked it with the timing light, made it index mark on the crankshaft so we could see where it was firing, and it was firing right at TDC or maybe a couple of degrees before. Fuel smells like gasoline. Had 50 pounds fuel pressure. We're going to say the timing chain it's possible it could have jumped 1 tooth. I don't know what it's supposed to fire at, this engine, because it's a computerized engine, and an engine can start from 20 degrees to 0 degrees before the up dead center for initial spark. So it's possible it's jumped 1 tooth, but it should still start retarded 1 tooth. So now we're going to check under the distributor cap. I pull the wires off one side, pull the air cleaner off here so we can, or the induction part of it, and we'll finish pulling the cap off and check underneath here. It's 2 screws, Torx. Person that listen. This bad guy. Okay. Oh, look at that. That rotor's kind of loose under there. Let's see. Oh, look at that. The rotor's broken right off. It was just spinning at random in there. Huh. I guess we're finished diagnosing. Should have started here. On second thought, when you wiggle this back and forth, the bushing shot in this distributor, so I guess we'll change the whole distributor on this one. Give him a new piece in there. Alright, we'll get the new piece and we'll see if this thing will fire up. On second look at this rotor, actually this is the top of the distributor that's broken. This is the part of the distributor that goes through the camshaft sensor. This cycles through the camshaft sensor so the engine knows what phase the camshaft is on, and that's broken right off. So it is the distributor that's broken, not the rotor itself. The rotor's still fine. It's still bolted on securely onto the piece there. Here we are with the new distributor. This one has the piece on the top of it still. As you can see here, it's got a little Hall effect sensor right here, and this metal piece passes through the Hall effect sensor, and it's a camshaft sensor, so the engine knows what position the camshaft is in, whether it's on compression cycle or exhaust cycle, or what state of the cycle is, because the crankshaft turns 2 times for every time the camshaft turns, so it needs to know what phase it's in. So that's what this sensor is for. So this piece here was broken off, so it wasn't passing through, and of course the rotor was out of time too. So on the distributor cap here, this is the broken off rotor. There's out of the top piece. So when it's turning in the distributor, your coil wire connects basically to that one through the top terminal, and then as the rotor turns, it goes across each one of these terminals for the spark plugs. And in this case we were lucky, I guess. Probably the rotor was stuck on the one that we just happened to pick, so it was actually shooting the spark to the one we were checking. So we'll check that again with the timing light when we're get it back together and see what it does again. Okay, I'm going to take it apart and stick it in there now. Okay, I've slipped the rotor back on so that it fits on where it broke off, so I'll just turn it so it's facing straight ahead on the crankshaft, and I'll locate the distributor so I get the cam sensor, which is right here, back in the right. Okay, so I get it in the same spot, and pull it out, put the new one in, and it should fire right up. I see they've made it very simple for us to locate the cam sensor in the right spot. You used to have to locate the distributor housing so that it was aligned in the right spot so the cam sensor was right, but now it's you can only just, it fits on tightly, and when you screw that down, it'll automatically locate the distributor in the right spot, so all we have to be concerned about is that the rotor is located right. So that makes that simple. There we go, distributor dropped right back in nicely. It's lined up with the same mark. Throw a new cap on and it should fire up. Oh, alright, here's the moment we've been waiting for. I'll see if it'll start. Perfect. Gotta like that. I'm just gonna throw the timing light back on it and see where it's firing now that the distributor cap's in right, just for future reference. Alright, thanks for watching.